Welcome to What's So Sweet with Garnet Terri. I am Garnet Terri of Terry's Cakes Detroit, and today we're going to make some fun things in the kitchen. So let's get started. We're going to start with our apple cinnamon pound cake. As you can see, we have a few sliced apples here, whole apple that I'll show you guys how to cut up, some eggs, sugar, flour, and salt and butter. Very simple. So first we'll start by turning on our mixer onto low. You are going to take 3 cups of butter, which if you have regular sticks is 3 sticks, and place each piece into the mixer. You want to turn it on low, otherwise all the butter will fly out of the bowl, and we don't want that because we don't want to clean that up off the floor. So we're going to go slowly, make sure all the butter is incorporated before we add in the 3 cups of sugar. Now, if you are cooking with little ones at home, this is also a great math activity. You can talk about halves and quarters. As you can see, we're using half sticks of butter instead of whole sticks of butter. And if they are tall enough to reach the counter, have them do this part. This is the easy part. As you see, the butter is incorporating pretty smoothly. And while it is doing that, we're going to add in the sugar to make sure that it's all incorporated. Now, one thing that my mom always taught me was clean up as you go so you don't have a lot left at the end. So you're going to try to do that also. So as you can see, we turned up the mixer just a little bit so we can speed up that process. We're using a 1/4 cup measurer just because it's easier so everything makes it into the bowl. And we're going to do 3 total cups. Alrighty, we're going to turn the mixer up just a little bit and turn it up slowly to make sure everything stays in the bowl. Now, as you're mixing, you're going to want to stop the mixer intermittently to scrape down the sides to make sure all the sugar ends up mixed in with the butter. There's no true method to this. However your spatula works, use it that way. Some are a little more sturdy than others. Take your time and make sure it stays in the bowl. The goal is to keep all the ingredients together in the cake. And then you'll turn it back on low. The next step, you're going to crack 6 eggs and put the eggs in one at a time reasonably. I like to crack all 6 at the same time, but if you don't trust yourself to keep the eggshells out or anything of that sort, you can definitely do it one at a time. But when you pour the eggs into the mixing bowl, try to pour them one at a time to make sure that they're incorporated. Large eggs are better. The yolk is a little bit bigger, makes the cake a little more full, a little more rich. And again, just try to go slowly so that you include everything in the bowl and nothing ends up on the counter, so you can enjoy the whole cake instead of bits of it. And again, you'll stop the mixer and scrape the sides to make sure everything is incorporated well. And again, start the mixer slowly to try to make sure everything remains incorporated into the cake. If you don't have a stand mixer at home, that's okay. You can use a hand mixer, it works the same. Just make sure you do your arm workout before because it is going to get a little heavy. Alrighty, today we used unsalted butter and we used 3 cups. So we need to add in a little bit of salt. If you're using butter at home, make sure you use salt, but salted butter. But you'll put a 1/4 teaspoon for each cup of butter that you used. As those things are incorporated, you'll now add in the flour. Flour gets a little tricky, so we're going to try to keep it all in the bowl by, again, using that 1/4 cup. You're going to use 3 total cups, but we're going to just separate it a little easier with the 1/4 cup. We like to level the flour with our finger, with a knife, with a spatula, whatever makes you most comfortable. Again, if you're using little helpers and they are 7, 8, 9, have them do a little math. Find out how many cups, 1/4 cups it's going to take to get to that 3 cups. And see if they can figure it out. As you can see, flour is going everywhere, and that's okay. I kind of try to look at how much comes out and add a little bit more at the end to make sure we have enough in there. And every mixer is different. Some are a little more powerful than others. So you just have to be mindful of what your mixer is doing. And as you can see, we're just kind of tapping the cup measure on the side of the bowl to make sure that we get as much flour in the bowl as we can. Flour is pretty light, so it's blowing all over the place, and that's okay. Like I said, you'll add in a little bit at the end. Just kind of guesstimate how much didn't make it in and add that much more. For us, we're probably only at about an 1/8 cup that we need to add extra. And as you can see in the bowl, it's incorporating pretty well. We're still gonna scrape down the sides, except we're gonna wait until we add the liquid. So today we're using apple cider, but the goal is to use any sparkling liquid. You could use a soda, you could use a champagne, you could use, like I said, a sparkling apple cider. Whatever you have, just make sure it's sparkling. It needs to be the same ingredient, but it can be a different flavor. So we're gonna add in 3/4 cups of the sparkling apple cider. And try to add that as slowly as possible, again, to make sure everything stays in the bowl. The goal is to keep it in the bowl so it will be in the cake when you bake it. Now, because we're using apple cider, we're also going to use fresh apples. You can do this however you like to do it. I came from an old family, and my grandfather didn't use too fancy things. So for us, we're just going to take a really sharp knife, cut it into quarters, and then we're going to take a smaller paring knife, and we're going to cut the seeds out, cut the pit out. Now, you may have an apple core at home. Use that. It's a lot easier. Or you may have a potato peeler. You can use that also to just get all the skin off of there. If you leave some on, it's okay. It won't hurt. Of course, make sure you wash the apples before you use them. Now, you can grate them or you can chop them. We just kind of cut them in slices and chop them up just a little bit. For this size cake, you really only need one sizable apple. So we're going to use 1 apple plus 1/4, only because we cut up an extra 1/4. Alrighty. You're going to take the apple. If you have little ones, let them taste the apple, make sure it's okay. And you're just going to add a couple of handfuls in there. As many as you think you might want. After it looks like everything is incorporated, you're going to stop the mixer. And then you're going to scrape those sides one last time to make sure everything looks like it is mixed together. You'll see if there's butter stuck on the sides or sugar or flour stuck anywhere. And you just want to make sure you get that off. Now, we will go ahead and spray our pan. I like to spray the pan over the sink just so you're not slipping and sliding all over the kitchen floor, because as we know, that grease is super greasy Whatever kind of spray you have is fine as long as it's a baking spray. If you do not have a baking spray, you can mix oil and flour together and just put it on the bottom of the pan. You can use a paintbrush, you can use your fingers, you can use a spoon, whatever works best for you. And you want to make sure you're making a generous spray over the pan so that nothing gets stuck, especially if you're using a bump pan because of all the crevices it has and you don't want the cake to fall apart. Remember, this is a pound cake. We don't ice our pound cakes. We're going to do a glaze after it comes out. So you don't have anything to help it look a little prettier. So you want to make sure you're doing it as generously as possible. And then you'll scoop the pound cake mixture into the pan. You should have, we did not tell you this, but you should have preheated your oven to 350 degrees. If you did not preheat it, it's okay. Just make sure you watch your cake and you don't over or undercook it. It'll take about an hour to bake, depending on your oven, if you have a convection oven or not. And depending on the size of your bump pan, you may not be able to fit all of the batter into the pan, and that's okay. If you have a ramekin, a glass bowl, a cupcake tin, anything of that sort, you can just put that on in those, put the extra in those, and bake that off. Or if you're working with those babies, you can make waffles with the pound cake mixture. Have that for breakfast tomorrow. Alrighty, we're gonna put it in the oven and see what happens. All right, now that we have our apple cinnamon pound cake in the oven, we're gonna get our chocolate chip cookies started. So you see we don't have a stand mixer anymore. This we are going to mix by hand. So I hope you went to the gym last night because you're gonna need all of that. So we're gonna start with 1.5 cups of melted butter. Pour that right into your mixing bowl. And you can melt it in the microwave, just in the glass measuring cup. Or you can melt it on the stove if that makes you happy, but it doesn't matter as long as it's melted. Then we are going to add 1 cup of brown sugar. It can be light brown, it can be dark brown. That doesn't matter. We're using the 1/4 cup again, so if you have those little ones helping, it'll be easy for them to put it in the bowl. And as you see, the bowl is a little bigger, so it's easier to handle. You're going to take your spatula and just start mixing those things up. And it's easier to incorporate each ingredient that you add instead of trying to mix them all at one time. After you mix that, you're going to mix 1 cup of white sugar. Still, again, using that 1/4 cup measure. If we're doing that math lesson, obviously that is 4 1/4 cups to give you that 1 cup of sugar. And we'll try to level it out as best we can, just so that we don't use too much sugar. We don't want them to be too sweet, and we don't want to change the chemistry of the cookies. Again, we will mix everything up as we incorporate it, just to make it a little bit easier to mix. After we add that in, it's about maybe 50 stirs if you want to count. I'm not counting, but you can do whatever makes you happy. Just make sure it is incorporated into the bowl well. Alrighty, next we are going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla paste. Most people do not have vanilla paste at home, so make sure you are not using vanilla extract because you will need that also. So you're just going to add 1 teaspoon. Again, incorporating after each addition to make sure nothing is too dense in any area and it's not too difficult to stir at the end. After we add that in, we're going to add in 3 cups of flour. You can do 2 cups, but 3 cups just makes your cookies a little more dense, a little more fluffy, a little more chewy, all the things that make an amazing chocolate chip cookie. We're going to take that handy dandy 1/4 cup again. So we're going to take 12 scoops of this. And remember to level your flour. You can use your finger, you can use a knife, you can use a spoon, whatever makes you happy, but just try not to make humps of flour and even it out. Now, I like to stop talking when I'm mixing and adding ingredients to make sure I count correctly. But if you think you can multitask, obviously you can do whatever you would like while you're making your cookies. As for me, I like to be as exact as possible, and I like to make sure that I'm counting and adding in what I should be. Now, as you incorporate this, you're going to fold in everything, not mix it. And you want the mixture to be like a light tan, if you will, and as few lumps as possible. You'll still see a few as you're mixing with a spatula instead of a stand mixer or even a whisk. So just make sure you incorporate it so you don't see any of that white flour. After you incorporate all the flour, you're going to let it sit for a little bit just to kind of settle. Alrighty. You're going to add in 1/4 teaspoon of salt. A pinch of salt is fine, but I think you should measure because baking is a science and you want to be as exact as possible. And make sure, again, you're incorporating it so that one area of the cookie is not too salty, because that happens and you don't want to get that cookie. That's for sure. Now, make sure you are using high-end chocolate chips. You're going to take your chocolate chips and you're using about 2.5 cups, give or take. You can be as generous as you would like. So we're going to do 6 scoops. Some people like to add chocolate chips at the end when you are pulling them out of the oven. You can also use a baking bar to do that. So if you want to use the whole bag of chocolate chips, you may. And then you'll shave the chocolate at the end, and we'll show you that step. And you'll just incorporate all those little morsels. Try not to get the mini morsels. They don't melt as nicely. Maybe you can mix in chunks, mix in the mini morsels, and mix in standard morsels just to give yourself a unique chocolate chip cookie. Alrighty, we're gonna let this sit for a little bit. Just let the batter rest. Yes, we're gonna let the batter rest and then we'll be right back. Alrighty, we let our batter sit just a little bit, so we're going to add in our eggs. So you're going to use 1 whole egg and 1 egg yolk. Now, when you are separating the egg yolk from the egg white, you're kind of gonna just do a little dance so that all the egg white comes out of the shell. And you're gonna try not to break the yolk. Sometimes it breaks anyway, and that's okay. But try to get as much of that egg white from that second egg that you can out. And then you'll just add that to the batter and just mix that in. And after that's incorporated, you'll let the batter sit just a little while. And while we do that, we will check on our cake and we will be right back. So we're gonna put 1 in each corner and then we'll put 1 in the center and we'll pop these in the oven for about 12 minutes. After you put them in the oven, you're going to rotate them at about the 6-minute mark to make sure they're baking evenly. And you should bake them on 350 degrees. Make sure when you put them in the oven, you put them on the middle rack, not the top or the bottom, so they bake as evenly as possible. So we'll see you back here in a little bit when we pop those out the oven. All right, these cookies came out of the oven smelling amazing. So we're gonna tell you a little trick. When you're making cookies, if you can spin the cookie around on the cookie sheet and it doesn't stick or fall apart, it's ready. So it gives you a nice little ooey gooey center still. Just perfect for those that like the crispy outside and the soft center. We like to do a few different things with our cookies. So first we have some chopped chocolate, and you can just put a little chopped chocolate in so it will melt just a little bit and be nice and extra chocolatey. And then we'll take another cookie. We're gonna leave this cookie on the cookie sheet, and we're gonna sprinkle just a little bit of powdered sugar on this cookie. What we have found is that the powdered sugar keeps it a little soft, a little gooey, a little longer. And that's what everybody loves, right? So we'll take some of these with powdered sugar, and we're also going to do some shaved chocolate on some of them. So you'll take a cheese grater or a citrus grater, whatever you have, and you'll just grate a little bit right on top of the cookie. You could also include other things like walnuts or pecans or almonds, or you could do a chocolate drizzle, or you could do caramel on top. You could also just sprinkle some sea salt. So have it your way and enjoy these, maybe even with some ice cream. We're gonna go check on the cake, pull that out of the oven, and show you how to finish that as well. We'll be right back. Alrighty, so we just took our cake out of the oven, and what you're going to want to do first is flip it onto a cake plate. It doesn't have to be an actual cake plate. It can be any plate as long as the plate is bigger than the pan. Perfection. So after we do that, while the cake is still warm, we are going to take a little bit of powdered sugar and just sprinkle it on top. This is the first variation of how you can serve your cake. So the cool thing about pound cakes is if you forget that you have to take a dessert somewhere, you don't have to ice it. So you can take the pound cake and you can make it pretty just like that. Simple sugar right on top, done and done. Your guests will think that you planned this for weeks. Now, if you would like glaze, what you'll do is, you remember we made an apple cider pound cake. So what you'll do is you'll take a little apple cider and you'll add some powdered sugar to it. Not much, just a little bit. And you'll mix it until it's very thick. And you can use a fork, you can use a whisk, you can use a spoon, whatever makes you happy. And you'll just keep on mixing, keep on adding powdered sugar until it turns into a more pasty glaze. And as you can see, our glaze is still a little thin, so we're actually gonna add some more powdered sugar. So if you can hold on for us while we grab some more, that would be great. Alrighty, so we'll keep adding the powdered sugar until we have a thick enough glaze that works for us. And there's no real rule to this, whatever makes you comfortable. And I don't know about you guys that are baking along with us, but this cake smells amazing. Can't wait to cut it and try it. So you'll feel it thickening up a little bit. And depending on what liquid you use, the color will change. So since we're using cider, ours is a little bit brown. And what you can do is, depending on how much you want, we just like to add a little bit of glaze just for a little razzle dazzle. But if you really like glaze, you can just keep pouring it over the cake and over the cake and over the cake until you are satisfied. And all you'll do is literally just pour it over the cake. It is probably going to drip all over your counter, so you might want to put a baking sheet under it, depending on what kind of plate that you used. And as you can see, ours is thin, and it's just going to run off and just add a little bit of sweetness to the cake and a little bit of finishing to the garnish, if you will. We like to pour the excess in the center, so as it hardens up, those that like a little more glaze have a little extra. And there you have it. You have both your apple cider pound cake and your chocolate chip cookies. We hope you enjoy What's So Sweet with Garnet Terri. Thank you for joining us today with What's So Sweet with Garnet Terri. We made an apple cider pound cake and we made chocolate chip cookies. You can follow us if you like what you saw, Terri's Cakes on Instagram, www.terriscakesdetroit.com for more recipes and to purchase some cakes from us. We hope to see you again soon. Have a great day.